Hey, welcome back to the Spirit Farm Podcast. I am Caleb Anderson, and in college I had a nickname. My nickname was Iceman. Someone started calling me Iceman because I was cool, calm, and collected. I was that guy. I was the setter on the volleyball team, which meant that all the offense came through me. The pass came to me. I decided who the ball was going to hit. And so I had to, I felt, stay cool, calm, and collected. Plus, it was just my demeanor. I had things under control, at least on the surface. It looked like I didn't get riled. I didn't get worried about stuff. I didn't overreact to anything. I stayed steady. And it's true, and it's been true my whole life. However, I still experience anxiety. Even someone who looks like they have it together on the outside, that they stay cool, calm, and collected, that everything is going fine, that I can be steady regardless of the circumstances, which is generally true. But even someone like that, even someone like me, we still experience anxiety. We still deal with worry, have to fight off our fears, and have underlying issues and insecurities going on. It is the human condition. We all deal with it, and especially in times of chaos. And this is a time of chaos culturally. If you're listening back to this right now, we are in the middle of a global pandemic. We are not out of this yet. There are signs that maybe the tide is turning in some places around the world. But in America, we are still in the thick of the coronavirus crisis. And anxiety is peaking. People that I love and that are close to me are losing jobs. I have elderly family members. I have 3 kids, for crying out loud. By the way, 3 kids that are being homeschooled because the schools have shut down, and a wife who's going a little bit crazy with the homeschooling and everything else. Plus, you throw in the financial strain and the uncertainty, starting something up from scratch in Spirit Farm that we're doing. It's all there. It's all there. So if you're experiencing those things, know that we are too, I am too. And I want to talk to you about what helps me, what I feel like God has been teaching me, not in audible voices, but through people, through circumstances, through that still small voice in my soul when I sit quietly in the morning listening and try to pay attention throughout the day. So that's where we're going to jump in. If you are someone who is experiencing that kind of knot in your stomach, if you are someone who's having a little bit of trouble going to sleep at night, or if someone close to you, someone that you love, is having these experiences where you're waking up at 3 a.m. because you just feel like you got to figure stuff out. You just got to go and make stuff happen because of all the chaos and uncertainty. I want to try to speak into that. And so I hope that you can sit with me. I hope that you can block out the distractions, stop scrolling, doing the other things, and not just listen to my words, but listen to that inner voice that you have, that maybe God might be wanting to speak to you. What do we do? What do we do in this time, in the chaos? There are 3 fundamental human reactions and responses. You've heard these things. Let me just go over them again. We as humans, when we feel like danger is at our doorstep, we do these one of 3 things. There's flight, fight, or freeze, right? Flight, fight, or freeze. Flight is when we just want to get out of the situation. Let's just, take my kid and go somewhere, go to Hawaii because that's the least affected place, or just kind of go into a bunker and hunker down and do whatever and just get out of this. I'm ignoring this. I'm doing something different. That would be an example of flight. Block it out, get out of there, get as far away from it as I can. Now, in a global pandemic, good luck. But the idea is we understand what flight means. The second thing is fight. This is when you kind of bow up and you're like, well, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to do something. I'm going to start this new thing, or I'm going to go get this money, or I'm going to keep them away and I'm going to hoard all the toilet paper and I'm going to do this and I'm going to fight. I'm going to be aggressive and go at this. And that's a more productive choice, frankly, but it has all kinds of landmines with it. You will probably end up breaking and crushing relationships, the person behind you that was counting on getting some toilet paper, the people closest to you that are feeling all your angst and aggression and anxiety, the person that you just kind of bowled over, bull rushed, and you say, oh, it's every man for himself, I gotta get mine, I gotta protect mine or whatever, and we just fight and we're willing to just step on people's toes to get what we need. It's not gonna go well for you in the long run if that's your approach. Or the third thing, freeze. Maybe you're someone or you're close to someone who just gets paralyzed and just kind of sits and freezes and doesn't know what to do. You might be this kind of a person if you're feeling lethargic and tired all the time. You're not doing that much physically, but your brain is just on overload, and so your body just kind of freezes. You're laying on the couch, you're not doing much, not being productive, not able to listen because your brain is just spinning, but your body is staying still. No guilt, no shame. That's the human tendency. Psychology 101. We kind of have one of these three defaults, and maybe even we just rotate through them based on where you are today or this week. But I want to suggest to you that there's a different way. There's a different way that we can actually experience freedom instead of these other three things. And the freedom that we're going to talk about is going to come from equal parts faith and action. There is a spiritual and visible dynamic to this. And hopefully by now you've realized that there are some things in this life and in this universe that are out of your control. So if you are not yet ready to embrace some form of faith, some form of trust or dependence on a higher power, a bigger God, a God who maybe has your best interest in mind, then I don't know what to tell you, because you are not the source. You are not the all-powerful one. So there's a faith component here, and when we have that faith part figured out, there are some appropriate actions. And so it's this kind of dance between these two things, faith, trust, and also doing the next right thing. So that's what we're going to look at. Last time in last week's episode, I talked about this road toward inner peace that Jesus lays out in his famous Sermon on the Mount. There's this passage that I'm going to read today about worry, and where he says, don't worry, and here's why. You don't have to worry. You can instead focus on this. But before he gets to that, he lays out four very simple things that we can do to help get out of our head and into our heart and soul. So you can listen to that episode next if you missed it. But today we are going to jump into worry itself. Let's start with the famous final line of this little passage that Jesus teaches on. It's a mini message, and this is the final line that Jesus says. And then I'll go back and I'll tell you what comes right before it. But Jesus says this. He says, "Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." Maybe you've heard that before. It's a famous line, and it is something to live by, especially when life and circumstances have gotten our attention and we know that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We know that what happens tomorrow, what happens this week, what happens this month globally is out of our control. It is uncertain, and the most powerful people in the world are in the same boat. They have some bigger levers that they can pull, but they are still at the mercy of something bigger that is happening in our world. Therefore, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. So here's what we're going to say. I want to invite you, if you want to join me in this. This is my tagline for the foreseeable future. This is what we can cling to. This is what we can go with. Maybe we can rally around this idea. I'm going to say, I'll worry tomorrow. Today, there are better things to do. Okay? I'll worry tomorrow. Today, there are better things to do. And we don't have time to worry. We're not going to worry about tomorrow today. Okay, I'll worry tomorrow. We'll worry later. There are some things that we can do today. In fact, I'm going to procrastinate my worry. I'm going to procrastinate my anxiety. I'm going to kick that stuff down the road because they're clouding my vision. They're making my heart anxious. They're disconnecting me. They're disconnecting my soul from connecting with God. They're not helping. So I'm going to worry tomorrow. Let's just get that out. I'm not going to figure all this out in my head today. I'm going to worry tomorrow. Today, there's some more productive things that you and I can do. We're going to simplify. For one, here are some helpful things that we can do today, and then I'll give you the rest of the passage that that he teaches. But here are some simple and helpful things that we can do today. Just consider this. You might see some bullet points on Instagram, some people that are trying to help and talking about some good and helpful things that may be some of these types of things. We can care for ourselves. Right? My family and I, we went for a walk in the desert in nature today, just walking around. There's something beautiful about that. We're together, we're in nature, we're away from people, we're breathing, we're walking, we're getting some exercise. What do you need to do to take care of yourself? Sleep for at least 7-8 hours. Get your rest. Eat healthy food. What's a next step that would be helpful in terms of you taking care of you? We can love and be close to our families. Other things are being stripped away, and the nuclear, the close relationships are becoming, we're seeing that as being more vital. We're kind of coming back into that right prioritizing. I had a family member say recently, hey, let's do dinner once a week instead of whatever kind of sporadic rhythm that we've been on. Why? Well, because when you can't just go and do whatever you want, you realize, actually, what I most want to do is just be with the people that I love the most. Right? And so this is helping us refocus and prioritize that way. We can be with the ones that we love and close to our families. We can cut unnecessary expenses. We can care for coworkers and neighbors. We can work on a passion project that we haven't been able to do until we had the time to do it. We can give to those in need. And we can pray, meditate, and connect to God's Spirit, who is holding all of this together in a very mysterious way. And he's taking us, God is taking us somewhere. Let's pay attention today and trust God with tomorrow. I'll worry tomorrow, but there's more productive things for me to do today. We recently were with Hillary's grandparents. Grandpa Jake is 93 and Grandma Pat is 90. And they were trying to get back to Washington. They're snowbirds. They were in the desert trying to get back to Washington before, flights got grounded or whatever. They wanted to be close to their doctors just in case. They wanted to be close to more family members and in their own home. So we helped get them kind of on the road and back up there. And while we were talking, right the day before Jake and Pat left and went back, we were sitting with them and just kind of asking them, how are you feeling about all of this? I mean, this is kind of crazy. This virus is seemingly really dangerous for the elderly primarily. And you guys at 93 and 90 fit that description. So how are you feeling about this whole thing? And the legend, the living legend, Jake Busich says, well, very confidently, didn't miss a beat, no hesitation. I've been in 2 wars, been a police officer, I've been hit by a car, I almost drowned 6 times in the ocean, and I think he said something else too, and he goes, the good Lord hasn't taken me yet, and I figure that he'll take me whenever he's ready to see me, coronavirus or not. Legend. I just smiled and I thought, I love this man and I'm grateful for this perspective. Jake is kicking anxiety down the road and just saying, there are better things to do today. If the good Lord wants to see his guy, I'm ready for him when he's ready for me. Here's some things that Jesus said about this whole idea of worry. Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? What is that more? Just pause there for a second. Is not life more than food? More valuable, more significant, more special, more spiritual? When other things, when extra things are taken away, less, in a sense, becomes more. And we see that the things that we've been focusing on are really not the main things. They are not the bigger things. And perhaps not that God is doing this to us, but I believe that God uses all things for our good. That God allows things, as people say, whether it's God or the universe that they reference, God is not doing this to you. God's doing this for you, or God's allowing this for you. That you can work something, that God will work something good out of all of this. That maybe you've been settling for less, and God is exposing that, allowing that to be exposed, and is elevating what is more. And Jesus says, is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or stow away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? You see how the flowers of the field grow? They don't labor or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon, the famous king, the wealthiest guy in all of his splendor, was dressed like one of these flowers. If that's how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and gone, and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans, or the people that don't pay attention to God, they run after those things. And your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. So Jesus is saying, let's get back to the basics. Less is more. Let's simplify this. You've been worrying about things that aren't necessary to worry about. And these things are pretty core and essential, aren't they? Jesus is saying food and clothes. And in that day, people didn't have freezers. They didn't have the Sub-Zero in the kitchen and then the Kenmore in the garage. I mean, they didn't have the extra freezer with all the stacks of meat and ground turkey and everything else. They had to go and get their food basically daily. I mean, they had salt that they could preserve some meat with, but stuff wasn't lasting very long. They really needed to have that day-to-day dependence on God to provide and to find food and to shop for food, to barter, to find the relationships that you could get more food. And with clothes, they didn't have closets. They didn't have closets. They had an undergarment and an outer garment. And maybe they had a change of the undergarment, but their outer garment was what they wore every day. It's not like they were looking for the newest, latest, greatest, and the fall fashion thing. And Jesus is saying, hey, don't worry about that. God will provide what you need, even these basics, as you kind of simplify and get back to what really matters. Simplifying, I think, is going to have such a positive impact on all of us, so many of us. Personally, for me, I feel like God is saying, will you trust me? Will you trust me? We're going to boil this down to what matters and to what doesn't. Will you trust me? Will you trust me with your family? Will you trust me with the house? Will you trust me with this? Will you trust me with that? Will you trust me? I mean, think of organizations and companies that have gotten rich and fat and lazy. Man, they're being challenged. They're having to trim down. They're having to innovate. They're having to create. They're having to think differently. Think of our churches that have kind of shut it down from a physical standpoint. They're trying to pivot and go digital. And they've been obsessed. So many of them have been obsessed with the weekend production. And now that's nothing. That's nothing. And then what are they going to offer? How are they going to really, truly love and care for people in this season? Man, it's going to be good for us in so many ways as we get down to the essence, to what really matters. And as we're willing to answer the question that Jesus asked, or that God asked, will you trust me? Will you trust me to provide these basics, these simple things? Because less is more. And when you have, all of a sudden you realize that you have less, the things that matter more are elevated, and they crystallize and come more easily, more better into focus. That's an opportunity. That's That's what we're seeing. And then you can step back and go, and even so, what's the worst case? What's the worst case? I have a family member, a loved one right now who's close to the end, who's not long for this world. But I'll tell you what, when she goes, it's going to be a beautiful thing because she will be out of a tremendous amount of suffering that she has been in. And on the other side of this thin veil that we live in is a beautiful eternity where our souls live on forever in a more engaged, a more obvious, a more kind of fulfilling and intimate and rich life with God that is just still a mystery. And I can't even find the right words for it because it's just that far out of reach. But at the same time, it's so close. What's the worst case scenario? That part of the journey begins? Okay. What's the worst case scenario? That you lose the house? Okay. Let's simplify a little bit. That you lose the job? All right. There's probably some other way that you can make even a more profound contribution. What's the worst case scenario? Okay. And God's saying, will you trust me? Because I'll provide for the main things. And the lesser things are going to be obvious, and the things that are more are going to crystallize and become more clear. I know people that practice some form, or I think they call it Stoicism, these guys that I'm thinking of, where they will go and they, for a week or for several days, they will decide that they're just going to simplify their life and they're just going to eat canned beans and rice. And even though the guys that I'm thinking of have tons of money, they're very wealthy, they intentionally discipline themselves for a week or longer to just eat beans and rice so that they know if the world ended, if everything collapsed, if they lost all their money, that they'd be okay. And it's this discipline to make them grateful for the things that they have and let them be confident that even in a worst case scenario that they'll survive and they'll be all right, and beans and rice aren't that bad. Worst case scenario, we can have peace and just go, all right, I trust you. You provide for the birds and the flowers. And all right, I'm going to kick worry. I'm going to kick that down the road. I'm going to worry tomorrow. There's more productive things for me to do today. And then Jesus had said, instead of worrying about those things, focus on the kingdom of God. Focus on that, which is another mysterious thing. But I like to think of it just as simply this, that the invisible priorities of God become more visible. That the invisible priorities of God, the activity of God's Spirit, the ongoing thing that God's doing, that would become more visible, that would become more reality, that would be more incorporated into my life, and that I would contribute somehow to those priorities. That love would win over needing to be right. That joy would be my experience even when things are hard. That peace would be possible even in the midst of chaos and storms of life and crazy circumstances. That patience could be realized even when everyone is hustling and bustling and chaotic around me. That the priorities of God would have their way more and more in me, in my family, in my home, in the work, in the neighborhood, in the world around me, and that I would be able to participate in some small way. Here are some of the benefits when we allow this to happen. When we worry tomorrow and we prioritize today, you're going to experience more clarity from your cluttered mind. There's going to be more clarity when we kick worry down the road. There's going to be more creativity to think outside the box, new ways of looking at things. There's going to be more confidence for you to be the best version of you, that you step into that next job interview if this job goes away with confidence and boldness and knowing I got this and God's got this and there's something good for me. I'm going to be me. I'm going to be the real me. I'm going to be the true me and make my best contribution. That there would be courage for you to take the next bold risk, whatever that is. And that there would be connectedness to yourself, body, mind, heart, and soul, connectedness to your creator God, and connectedness to the people around you. Those are the benefits when we kick worry, and we'll have to keep kicking it down the road and say, not today, worry. Tomorrow I'll worry. Today, there's better things for me to do. There's this great story about Jesus visiting these two women in their home. And one of them, Martha, is just a frenzy of activity. She's working with the food. She's getting the house all ready. She's got the Swiffer out with one hand, and then she's cooking with the other. And her sister Mary is over here just sitting in the living room with Jesus. And Martha she's doing the Mary. She's like doing all the things to try to get her sister's attention to say, this isn't okay. You should be contributing and helping me. And then finally, she just kind of blows a gasket. And she's like, Mary's not paying attention to me. Jesus, can you do something? Can you tell her to help me? I am doing some very important things. The God of the universe is in my house. I have to make a good impression here, not a first impression, but there's other people that are going to ask how this went. There's other people looking through the windows and doors trying to get a glimpse of Jesus in my house, and they're seeing everything. And Jesus says, Martha, 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 you are worried about many things, but only one is important, and Mary has chosen what is important, which was just being with the God of the universe, who was trying to get her attention all along. Martha frantically trying to do things that aren't bad, but things that are just out of priority. When you're just with God, God will illuminate the next right thing to do. There's faith, and then there's action. You'll know the next right thing. You'll have that clarity. You'll have that confidence. You'll have that courage to take the risk if the next thing is a risk, when you have that connectedness to your God. One of the things that I do is I start the morning by just praying and being still. And it's kind of a prayerful meditation, and I have a routine. I call it TASKS, TASKS, an acronym that stands for thank, affirm, surrender, kill, and serve. There's more on that at spiritfarm.tv. We have a video, we have stuff like that. But I am also going to be in these next few weeks walking through meditations midweek. So I hope that you see those, look for those in the podcast in the coming days, and I'll walk you through some of that. But you can do whatever it is that works for you on your own. The key is to remember, I'll worry tomorrow. Today there are better things to do. I'll worry tomorrow. Today, there are better things to do. I'm going to trust the God of the universe. I'm going to prioritize the invisible kingdom and those things becoming more visible. I'm not going to worry about all the things that I can't control. I'm just going to do the next right thing. I hope that serves you.